friends. Welcome to Flosstube and Variety Show number 86, I think it is. The card you will have just seen at the beginning of the video will show you what number it is. I'm Emily Williams in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and this is Friday, July 21st, 2023. As you see, I'm back in my normal spot. There's no extraneous noise happening that I'm at least expecting. And thanks for joining me this morning. It's morning. That's another thing that's a little unusual today. Flosstube means cross stitch and variety show means something else. So we'll just jump right in. As you know, I didn't make a video last week, or you may not know, but I didn't, because I was in Canada visiting my friend Anne, and I'll have more to say about that in a little while. But one of the things that meant is that I didn't do as much stitching on as many variety of projects as I would have if I had been home, because I only took one project up there, and I'll show that to you in a minute. But first, I'm gonna show you that I cheated. This is Mighty Acorn by Blackbird Designs. And as you may remember, I do Blackbird projects on the first weekend of every month. And I did work on this on the first weekend of every month. And then last night I was just sort of musing about what to do. And I decided, I think I want to pull that out. It's a pretty big project compared to other Blackbirds that I've done. So I thought I would put more time in on it. And I was especially interested in getting down to the bottom of that border. So that's what I did, just a little bit of time last night. I like how this is going to look. I think this is Eureka 18 count Aida by Fox and Rabbit. It's sort of a grayish brown color. It's not really warm. I would say it's a more cool, nice color, and I like working on it. So since getting back from my trip, and also I think a little bit before I went, I worked on Winter Rose Manor by Brenda Gervais with a needle and thread. And I had thought, when I got back from Canada, I thought, well, this would be good. I'll just do a bunch of fill-in stitches on the house. And then I instead started building the window frames. I did some fill-in, but I got up to the level of that, the second story window frame. And part of the reason I did that is because I wanted to get the third story window frame in that goes above the cardinal. I know you can hardly see it. So that I would be sure the cardinal and the siding of the house and so on was all in the right place. But I haven't quite gotten over to the border on this side. I mean, I'm ready to do it, I just haven't done it. I haven't turned the corner. But once I do that, then we'll see the full dimension of it. But right now I'm more interested in getting the house done because it's a lot of stitches involved in the house. Love working on this. I am still uncertain about the colors, but I really like the design. I think it will all come together when it's completed. I have trust. I have faith in the designer. So when I went to Canada, as you may remember, I was in part using it as a test run for taking a cross-stitch project with me on a trip on an airplane. Because as you know, in just over 2 months, my friend Leslie and I are going to the Great British Sampler Weekend. And I would love to know in the comments if there's anyone else going. Anyone who's watching this video, or if you know someone who's going, alert them that I'm going. If you watch their videos, alert them that I'm going, because I would love to know other Flosstubers who are going and meet up, just to have a chance to meet them. I think that would be a lot of fun. Anyway, the project I chose to take was Mathilde. This is from the Letters from Europe box, the Hands Across the Sea box. And I chose this one because I was pretty far along in it and it's only 2 colors, so it's less complicated than some of the other things I could have taken with me. And I'm doing it on 18 count, no, 20 count Aida, Just the Ticket by Tabby Cat. And I don't know, it's been a few weeks, maybe a month since I've shown it, but I finished the lowercase alphabet and the border, or the banner, the design that follows it. I did the little teapot, and I think I had already done those 2 red things, border designs, I guess they are, bands, there we go. And I wanted to get into the blue, and then I realized I wanted to get down to the bottom. And so I just started the blue bands below that initial blue band. So I'm not using the threads that are called for in the pattern because I did buy a blue thread to go with this, but I had a number of reds because of that box. And this is where I am on this red. Now, I have scrutinized the pattern. It says 1 spool of a 103 for the red. So I have to hope that that's going to be true. What remains in red is the rest of the border, which is not insignificant. And there's a key over here. So the rest of the border, there's this key over here, and then there's the cartouche that goes around her name, and the rest of it is blue. So I'm hoping I'll have enough thread. If I don't, I have other reds, and I thought about, oh, Emily ordered another spool, but I didn't really want to because it's more in keeping with the tradition of these samplers, of these childhood samplers, that they used what was on hand. And if they ran out of a particular red, they would just pull another red out of the sewing basket because that's how it was done. And you can see a lot of evidence for that in antique samplers. So I'm not going to worry about it. I have some similar red that will be fine. So how did the experiment work? Well, you see, I did get some stitching done. Clearly not as much as I would have gotten done here at home because we had many other things that we were doing, which I'll talk about in a minute. But what I took was a sturdy project bag that no vinyl front, just, padded with batting, a good zipper, and sturdy because it had to be in my suitcase. And then I took the 2 threads, these cute little scissors, which worked out fine. Love those, actually. Enjoyed working on them. A needle minder with a needle. A hoop, because I use a hoop. One of my ribbon magnetic tie-back things that I make. And this, I think I've shown this before, this tray I made. This is cotton clothesline that I stitched on my sewing machine using a zigzag stitch, and then I just added some bits of fabric to give it a pop of color. And then I made the edge come up a little bit because what I wanted was something that a spool of thread would not roll out of easily. And that's all I took. Now the thread and the scissors and this little tie back were in a tiny little pouch, a little zipper pouch in my, oh yes, I also took the lamp, I forgot, of course. This fold up lamp with a magnifier. It's rechargeable, there's a battery in here, you recharge it. So I took these things in my suitcase, which I did as a carry-on to go and a checked bag to come back. So I really covered all the bases on that. And it worked out fine. I didn't feel like there's one tiny thing that I felt the lack of, but in terms of my tools, I had everything I needed. So a couple of things that I'm gonna do differently when I go to England. One is I'm gonna take multiple needles because I realized if I lost that needle, I would be out of luck. Now, when I go to the Great British Sampler Weekend in England, if I lose my needle, there's going to be 160 people who will raise their hand saying, I can lend you a needle or give you a needle. So not too worried really about that, but I should have taken another needle. Even my friend Anne probably might have had a suitable needle. And if not, there might have been a store there that I could have bought one. But fortunately, I didn't lose my needle, so that's good. The other thing I kind of wished that I had taken or had or thought about was a way to catch my little threads. Because at home, I use a little bowl. This was given to me by my friend Brent, who died 2 years ago, and I use this almost all the time to catch my threads, and I think of him when I use it. Yeah, there's a story there too about why he gave me that, but or I have another little bowl that my friend Emma gave me. She is currently living in Italy, and it's just a cute little bowl. So I use some bowl, but I'm not going to take something like that to England. That's not, I don't think it's necessary, and I didn't take anything at all to Canada with me. So what I think is I could either, I mean, I know people make little fabric collapsible things to put their threads in. I don't think I'm going to bother with that because it's just another thing. And I don't save my threads and, you know, make some Christmas ornament or anything out of them. I just throw them away. I mean, yes, there are threads in here and a scrap of paper, and you can tell if you were to scrutinize that I worked on Winter Rose Manor, but I don't save them. I have enough impulse to save things that are worthless. I don't need to add that to it. And I don't mean any offense to those of you who do save them as mementos of your stitching. I get that, I really do. So what I decided is I'm not going to bother making anything or taking anything in particular because there's always going to be a little napkin or a bit of tissue or something that I can just put my threads on. And what I did in Canada is I just set it on this little tray I had, you know, over in the corner. And then at the end of when I was going to pack up for the day or for that, you know, when we wanted to use the table to eat on or something, I just gathered them up and put them in the trash. So I'm sure that that's going to be fine. I also think that at the table I will be sitting at the Great British Sampler Weekend, someone will have a little container, and perhaps they will allow me to put my little threads in there. So that was what that all happened. It went fine. I feel really good about that. I enjoyed stitching on this when I was visiting and the little odd moments that I had, and that was fun. I made this project bag. Yes, I did. Okay, what else? Nicola Parkman's most recent video, which I think went up Sunday morning, she gave a very interesting and informative segment on how to select thread and needles for your project, which, being a sewing machine user, I know that you want to match those things. Thread and needles have to match in a certain way, and they have to match your purpose in sewing. But she was in particular going through how to use the fine threads, 103 and soie fine, with what needles to use. And so she recommended some John James needles, which of course I immediately ordered. And these are they are the short tapestry beading needles. Is that what they're called? Tapestry point. Short beading tapestry point. And she recommended size 10 and size 12. So I got some. And I have opened the package to look at them. I'm not going to bother opening the package to show you because I just don't think you can see needles in this medium. And I decided I wasn't going to try to work on Hannah Campbell this week because I just didn't have it in me to get started on that. And I also thought, well, I'll wait till the needles come, because when I start doing the over 1, I'm going to use whichever needle seems appropriate for the 103, which is probably the size 10, the larger needles. And I am a little, I mean, it'd be interesting because they're called tapestry point, but they are pretty sharp, but that's because they're so thin. And the eyes, I think the big difference is that the eye of them is smaller, much smaller than the, say, Peacemaker 28s that I am using on Mathilde. And the advantage of that is when I work with this 103 on Mathilde in that Peacemaker 28, it's to the whole of the eye. Emily, come on. The eye of the needle is what we call it. Which is hard for a camel. It's easier for a camel to get through than the, something. Boy, I'm drawing a blank. I was just distracted by, apparently our lawn care people who do the fertilizing and weed control treatments have arrived. Normally they knock on the door to tell us they're here. Anyway, so I'm just a little distracted by watching this guy go around. I'll try to not pay attention. Anyway, it's supposed to hold the thread in there better if the eye is more appropriately sized to the thread, which I can well imagine this will hold the thread in there. So that is something I'll be trying. I'll tell you plans in a minute. Now, it also was, as you remember, my birthday last month, and Leslie sent a package, which I received, and there were several things in it. So she sent these 2 little patterns, Fragments in Time 2022 by, now she told me the name of the designer, and it's not, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but it's Susquehanna Valley Samplers. They're things from Susquehanna Valley Samplers. Summer House Stitch Works is the company. You can go online, and I'll spell it out in the description box below. But this is like a miniature sampler. I mean, here we have an evergreen tree, we have a flowering tree, we have a bird, we have grass, sheep. I mean, it is just the cutest thing. And then this is a beautiful little pillow type design with a couple of those Nordic rose type stars and other flowers and a border. So darling, really. This one in particular, I can imagine changing the colors to match some theme that I wanted to match, although the colors as presented are very pretty. But, you know, I have a bunch of leftover threads from different things. I could just choose my own colors for those. Cute. Thank you, Leslie. She also made me some project bags. Now, a while ago, I showed you the project bag that she gave me maybe a 1.5 years ago, which was very similar to this, as vinyl front, this great book fabric, which is very appropriate because she's a librarian and we both love books. And she made another one of the same fabric, and it's fantastic. I think this vinyl may be a thicker gauge, but very excellent. And I have to decide what project is going to be in that. But then she made this cute little one, the same fabric, same design, which I'm going to be doing at least one Christmas ornament, small type thing, which I think this will be perfect size for, because it will be a smaller hoop and fewer threads, and I'm going to have to do with the design myself on the first one that's on my mind. So, you know, it'll probably be, the pattern will be in Pattern Keeper, not printed, but I think that will be perfect for little projects, or for holding the threads of a project that's stored in the bigger bag. So that was fun to receive. Thanks, Leslie. And I think that's all I wanted to talk about with regard to cross stitch. Now let's see if I can keep the camera from going off, because I just moved my arm in a way that might have been the trigger in previous times. Okay, we're good. Variety show. So when I was in Canada, when I go to Canada, which I haven't been there since November of 2019 until this time because of the pandemic restrictions. Canada and the US closed their borders against each other for probably over a year. I think the borders might have opened summer of 2021 or maybe fall of 2021. But there were a lot of, testing requirements in crossing the border up until maybe spring of 2022, because I know when Anne came down for Christmas in 2021, that was the first time she'd been down, and there were complications in terms of timing of you need to get a test within 72 hours of crossing the border and all that stuff. And she was driving, so that was a complication. Anyway, there are no testing requirements, no masking requirements. All of that has been lifted, so that made this trip easier. So I flew there, no issues, arrived. Well, might have been a little late. Might have arrived late because there was some weather-related issues, but it was fine. We had a nice time. We played games. Dominion is one of our favorites. We played a few other games I think I've mentioned. San Juan, I've mentioned recently. It's a card game that's based on a very complicated board game type game. Cribbage, which is one of the greatest card games played with regular cards ever invented. And seems to me we played something else, but I can't remember what it was. Anyway, we played games, we ate some delicious food that she fixed and that we went out for, and we took some walks, and I'm gonna put a few pictures in scattered along here, because the first place we went is one of the places that I always enjoy. And we went to that place because she needed to check on some geocache elements to something that she is the cache owner of. And also because you can feed chickadees and nuthatches and chipmunks along this trail. And I have some pictures of a chipmunk that I really thought was going to climb my leg. I had to keep shooing it away after I dropped some seed on the ground for it. And he didn't climb my leg, but I think he might have. He was pretty bold. And we didn't get pictures of the chickadees and the nuthatches, but that's just so fun. You put seed in your hand and hold your hand out like this, and the chickadee will come and light on your fingertips and take a seed and fly off, and then another one comes. Very fun. Nuthatches, you have to put your hand pretty close to the tree. They don't want to leap to your hand very far from the tree, which is where they feel safer. But this little nuthatch landed on my hand, and he sort of gave me a look like, I don't know, I don't anthropomorphize animals very well, but anyway, that was it. Very fun, very fun. Now, we would have gone out, I'm sure, on many more walks, except that it was pretty hot for Canada. Not that hot compared to here, but for Canada it was. And so we didn't go out as much as we might have. When I was there in November of 2019, it was one of the coldest Novembers that they had, and we took a long geocaching walk that night. So geocaching, what is it? If you go to geocaching.com is a website. It's sort of the main website of geocaching, and the headquarters of geocaching.com is in Seattle, and I've actually been there to the headquarters. But geocaching.com is a way to get into how geocaching works and what to do. And what you do is you download the coordinates, the GPS coordinates, latitude, longitude coordinates of a location. and you go to that location, and there you will find a container of some sort. It could be tiny, it could be huge. And in the container is a log, a paper thing, a little notebook or a roll of paper, depending on the size of the container. And you sign that log with your geocaching name, which can be your own name or it can be a made-up name. Mine is _2rivers. And you put it all back just exactly as you found it, and then you go to the website and you, on the log page for the cache that you had downloaded the coordinates for, you write a log saying that you found it. And then when that happens, your map shows a little smiley face. So the goal, of course, is to get a lot of smiley faces. Well, I have over 600 finds. I would say 550 of them have been in Anne's company because she's an avid geocacher. She has thousands of finds and hundreds of caches that she's placed, I would say. I would guess she's over 200 caches, I think. Maybe many more than that, possibly. And she's a very creative person in her caches, and her caches tend to get favorite points, which as you find more caches, you get you're given a favorite point that you can award to a cache. So her caches have a lot of favorite points. And I've found a lot of her caches because why not? I want to find the ones that are the good ones, and I want to see what her creative mind has come up with. So anyway, that's always fun. She has a couple of caches down here, one of which is I am the owner of, but most, or maybe two of them I'm the owner of, but 2 or 3 others she has down here. And so when she comes down, if there's any need for maintenance, well, if there's any need for maintenance when she isn't coming down, I can deal with it. Fortunately, there hardly ever is any need for maintenance. So, but it's very fun. It's a great activity, I will tell you, to do with your kids or your grandkids. You need a smartphone or a dedicated GPS unit, not the one in your car, but something you can carry by hand to walk around, because it's primarily a walking hobby. So it gets you out walking. The best, well, there's all kinds of caches. Some you can drive right up to and you park and you get out and do that. Those are called park and grab caches. There are different sorts of those. But a lot of I would say the most fun ones are ones that are in the woods or in a park or along a trail somewhere. And those are fun because you're out there walking with a destination, which is my preferred way to take a walk. So that was really fun. And it's always fun. And she's she sort of creates the geocaching resort experience. You go up there and you say, I'm interested in this sort of cache. And so she plans it all out. She feeds you delicious food. She drives you. She assists you. She provides you with equipment and coats and mittens and so forth. And that's really fun. Anything else? Oh, yes. So I'm looking at my notes. I want to commend to you Susan Stanley, Stitch in Time. It's a YouTube channel. She is, I may have mentioned her before because she's one of the ones that I look forward to every time and always feel that I've learned something. So she does interesting projects, but she does more than just cross-stitching. She does a lot of very interesting quilts, beautiful quilts that are made primarily of reproduction fabrics from the 19th century. This year, her focus in her own work and in her Flosstubes has been on 1840 stitching and other things from around that time. And just in the past month or so, she has started a tutorial section on making a doll quilt the way a little girl would have made a doll quilt in 1840. And so she's created a little child and her, an imaginary child, and the materials that this child would have had available, and you can buy a kit if you want to buy the kit, or you can just watch the tutorials and use the materials that you have yourself. And so I've done an awful lot of hand stitching. I've done hand stitched piecing. I've done hand piecing before. I don't really need a tutorial about it. Nonetheless, in watching her, it wasn't that I learned something from her tutorial, but I was just so impressed with how very specific and thorough she was in her instructions. And I feel as if she has a unique ability of being very experienced and yet remembering what somebody might not know and not assuming. She really starts not assuming. She explains even what the right side and the wrong side of the fabric is and how to do hand stitches. And her goal is that every person, whether child or adult, whether you're experienced or not, you could be successful in making this little doll quilt. I am certain that we will all be successful making it entirely by hand. Now, I have a billion projects going. I have two important ones. So I'm not going to start this project in earnest anytime soon, but I do think that it's worth watching her general Flosstube videos and paying attention to this project. If you have a child in your life who you think might be ready to learn to sew something, this might be a way to get that child started. You can use things you have yourself, or you can get the kit. It's very excellent, and all of Susan Stanley's content is very interesting and very well done. So she does a lot of editing. She does her videos in little segments, which means there's less dribble and less extraneous nonsense. So from that standpoint, she's a much better YouTuber than I am, because as you know, I do minimal editing. None at all, if I can help it. Okay, I think that is all I had to talk about today. There wasn't much quantity of cross stitch. There was a lot more talking. I hope that's not too disappointing. And normally I show, what would you say, 5 projects at least in a video that I'm working on. This particular weekend is technically the 4th weekend in July, but because I was away last weekend, I'm going to work on my Christmas Nativity Stitch Along, which there's a hashtag, hashtag Nativity Sal. And I'm working on Nativity Scene by Stitche Princess, Etsy shop, Ukrainian designer. You can look back at previous videos to see what that project is, or you can wait till next week and see what it is. I'm going to work on that this weekend, even though it's technically not the Christmas weekend, the Nativity Sal weekend, which is supposed to be the 3rd weekend of every month. So that I'm going to work on. I'm going to try to work on the design of the little Christmas piece that I'm going to put in that tiny, cute little project bag that Leslie made, and keep going on these other things. I'm working on Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather to achieve the 1,027 stitches that represents the sprinter's jersey, the green jersey in the Tour de France challenge that's going on the Full Coverage Fanatics Facebook group I'm part of. So I'm working on that. I'm within shooting distance of finishing that. It needs to be done by the 23rd, so I have 2 days. Easy, no problem with that. I'll show that again next week, even though I haven't shown Tiger. Maybe I'll show both of them. Wouldn't that be a shock? And I'll just keep going on these things. I kind of have this urge to finish Mathilde. Oh yes, another thing is I must get working on some full finishes, fully finishing some things that I've finished the stitching for recently. So maybe next week I'll have some of that to show. I don't know. Cindy and I talked about doing another galloping horse video before the end of the month, so possibly we'll record that next week and it might go up soon. But it might be the beginning of August before we get around to that because there's a ton of things going on. Anyway, that's enough. Enough of me nattering on. Thanks so much for watching. I do plan to do a video next week. If you enjoy these, YouTube likes it when people subscribe. I like it when you subscribe, but it doesn't matter to me as much as it seems to matter to YouTube, so you decide what you want to do. If you do subscribe, at least you might want to click the little notification bell, and then you'll get an alert in some way. Somehow you'll be notified if I put up a video. When it is, well, you get notified every time I put up a video, but it might be especially interesting if you, if I put up a video not in the normal pattern, because then you'll not miss it. Okay, enough. Emily, thanks so much for watching. Many blessings to you, friends.